Hello, and welcome back to The Critique.
Hey there.
So today, we are deep diving into a submitted commentary script analyzing the "It Ends With Us" controversy.
Right.
It's all about the theory that Taylor Swift and Blake Lively coordinated to marginalize the director Justin Baldoni.
There's a lot of fire behind this one.
There is. So let's get straight to the feedback. A key theme here is, I think, the tension between the hard evidence, and there's a lot of it, and the narrative voice used to deliver. So our first point is about the script's tone, consistency, and its professional authority.
Okay.
The script frequently oscillates between what sounds like investigative reporting and then this sort of colloquial derision.
I noticed that immediately. Yeah. 1 minute you're looking at a deposition, the next minute the narrator's just throwing insults around.
Right.
I do wonder, though, have we considered the audience here? I mean, this feels like it's written for the internet, maybe YouTube or TikTok. Isn't that snarky tone just part of the vernacular?
That's a valid question, and snark can be a choice for sure. But the weakness here is that while the material presents really damning evidence, its impact is diluted.
Okay.
It's diluted by using dismissive, gendered, or even patronizing language when the narrator uses terms like sweetheart or lady.
In their own voice, not in a quote.
Exactly. Not in a quote. It just shifts the whole thing from an objective expose to a personal rant.
Right. And you run the risk of, well, you lose the neutral audience, don't you? If I'm a casual fan and I hear the narrator say sweetheart, I just immediately think, okay, this person's biased.
You're biased. And the script actually contradicts itself. The author explicitly says they dislike the angry manosphere, but then they use that exact lexicon. It allows any skeptic to just dismiss the valid points as misogyny.
So the evidence gets thrown out with the bathwater because the tone alienated the listener. So what's the fix? Do you sanitize it completely?
Not sanitize, I'd say elevate. The suggestion is to adopt a more clinical, forensic tone.
Let the evidence speak for itself.
Exact. The evidence is strong enough. It doesn't need the extra adjective.
That makes sense. Let's look at an example. There's a line addressing Blake Lively about the editing room.
Right.
It currently says, sweetheart, you should not even have been in the editing room.
It sounds like a scolding, doesn't it? It's diminishing.
It is.
A much stronger way to say that would be something like industry norms typically preclude lead actors from dominating the post-production process to this extent.
Oh, that's much stronger. It sounds like an expert analysis, not a personal grievance. It implies a professional rule was broken.
Precisely. And let's take another one. That text message where Taylor Swift supposedly writes, "I think this bitch knows something is coming."
Yeah.
The current script prefaces this with all these emotionally charged labels about mean girls.
It frames it before we even hear it.
Right. Instead, the writer should just read the text, verbatim, and then explain the implication. Something like, the use of this language suggests a coordinated strategy rather than a supportive friendship.
It's almost colder that way, more clinical. It treats the text like a smoking gun, not just gossip.
And what about the "well, lady" comment?
Oh yeah. Well, lady, he's the director, which feels very internet comment section.
Very. So just replace that with something grounded in hierarchy. As the director, Baldoni held the primary creative mandate. It reinforces the professional boundary violation without the name-calling.
It really does change the flavor from a YouTube rant to a serious industry commentary. It makes the argument a lot harder to dismiss.
Okay, moving on to our second point. The argument really leans on this concept of the ruthless businesswoman.
It does.
Which leads us to our next critique, bridging the business versus bullying argument. Right now, it conflates ruthless business tactics with mean girl behavior, and it doesn't clearly distinguish where one ends and the other begins.
This is a fascinating area. I mean, the script itself argues that to get to Swift's level, you have to be a ruthless businessman.
It does, yeah.
It basically says you don't get to be a billionaire without breaking some eggs. But then it uses that same ruthlessness as proof that she's a mean girl.
And that's the weakness. It's a logical leap. Being a shark in Hollywood is, well, it's often a requirement for survival.
Right.
Being a bully is a character flaw. And by treating them as the same thing, the script weakens the specific accusation that they were unjustifiably cruel to Baldoni.
I see. So the audience might just accept the premise that you have to be a shark and then just shrug and say, well, good for them, that's just business.
Exactly. That girl boss defense is very powerful. Fans will defend their idols for being tough. So the suggestion is to create a much sharper distinction between the shark, the necessary ambition,
and the mean girl,
the unnecessary cruelty.
Yes, that's the crucial distinction. It validates the defense. Sure, they're tough in business, but then it pivots to show where they went too far.
So how do you execute that in the script?
Well, for example, first you acknowledge that them taking control of the film could be seen as smart business.
Grant them that point.
Grant them. Taking over the final cut is aggressive, but it's business.
Okay.
But then you contrast it explicitly with the unnecessary personal attacks. Reframe it. Something like, while curating a strong business image is standard in Hollywood, the evidence suggests these actions went beyond creative control and into the personal dismantling of a colleague.
Personal dismantling. That's a great phrase. It separates the professional move from the personal destruction.
Exactly. The tiny violin text, the alleged ambush at the penthouse, those aren't business moves. They're humiliation tactics.
That makes total sense. What about the song Cancelled? The script mentions it. But again, artists write songs about their lives. Is that bullying or just art?
And that's where the distinction has to be sharpest. You need to distinguish between art imitating life, which is business,
Right.
and using a global platform to ridicule a specific individual, which is bullying.
So it's not unacceptable because she wrote a song. It's unacceptable because she's punching down at someone she has already legally silenced.
Precisely. It highlights the power imbalance. It's not a fair fight. It's a global superstar using her megaphone to crush a director who can't speak. That's not business, that's bullying.
That nuance makes the Mean Girl label stick so much better than just saying she's ruthless. It highlights the excessiveness.
Okay, let's move to the third critique. The source material spends a lot of time analyzing the personalities, right? Baldoni's Baha'i faith versus the Hollywood shark mentality.
Yeah.
And this brings us to substantiating psychological claims. The narrative relies heavily on projecting internal feelings onto the subjects, which it weakens the factual basis of the argument.
I noticed that. The script says things like, I would imagine that they actually found it revolting.
Right.
Or that they were grossed out.
Yeah.
That's speculation.
That's the core weak. Claiming they were visually revolted is an assumption that you just can't prove, and it makes the narrator sound biased. It's mind reading.
And when you start mind reading, you lose credibility, but the underlying point about the culture clash is strong. Is there a risk that by focusing on these imagined feelings, you overlook the actual friction?
That's the key. The suggestion is to pivot from speculating on feelings to analyzing action. Analyze the miscommunications caused by that culture clash.
So instead of they were grossed out, you look at how his earnestness actually functioned in a negotiation.
Exactly. Here's a concrete example. Instead of saying, I would imagine that they found it revolting, try something like, this sincerity likely created friction with Hollywood figures accustomed to transactional relationships.
That sounds so much more professional. It describes the mechanism of the conflict without guessing at anyone's internal state.
And then focus on the outcome. The script mentions the culture clash, where Baldoni's kumbaya approach left him vulnerable.
It uses the phrase lamb to the slaughter.
Use that. Contrast his openness against the Machiavellian tactics of the producer. That's an observable dynamic.
What about the cult accusations? The script gets a little sidetracked defending the Baha'i faith.
It did. It felt like a theology lesson. The suggestion is to use that evidence more objectively. Instead of defending the faith, focus on the
Ah.
Say something like, labeling a mainstream religious belief as a cult was utilized as a tool to delegitimize Baldoni's leadership.
That's fascinating. It frames the cult comment as a strategic weapon, not just a misunderstanding. It turns a theological debate into more evidence of a ruthless tactic.
Precisely. It ties right back to the business versus bullying theme. Weaponizing someone's religion is a bullying tactic used for a business end.
Okay, so we fixed the tone, clarified the business argument, and grounded the psychology. Now we have to land the plane, the ending, the lawsuits.
Yes, this leads to our fourth critique, structuring the legal context. The explanation of the legal battles is, defensive and clunky. It really distracts from the narrative momentum.
I felt that too. It was like the script paused to apologize for Baldoni losing. It says something like, people need to understand that his lawsuit getting dismissed means nothing.
Right. And then it goes into this long comparison with Johnny Depp and Marilyn Manson.
It drags.
And that's the weakness. It spends so much time justifying why it was dismissed, citing California versus New York law. It feels like an apology, not an explanation of the current stakes.
And the audience for this kind of content probably already has a vague idea about anti-slap laws. We don't need a lecture, we need the drama.
So the suggestion is to streamline it. Focus on the upcoming threat to Lively, not the past failure of Baldoni.
That's where the heat is. So how do you condense the jurisdiction stuff without losing the context?
One tight sentence. For example, defamation suits are notoriously difficult to win in New York and California due to anti-SLAPP laws, which explains the dismissal regardless of the claim's merit. Boom, done.
That covers it perfectly. Then you can move on.
And you pivot immediately to the stronger hook, the upcoming trial in May where Lively is the plaintiff.
Right. The script mentions that, but it gets totally buried.
It gets buried, and there was that detail about Taylor Swift potentially being involved.
Yes, that felt like a huge throwaway line.
It was. So highlight that risk. The script says she could be called as a hostile witness. That shouldn't be a side note.
It should be a headline.
It should be the headline. The real drama isn't the dismissed lawsuit. It's the potential for Taylor Swift to take the stand as a hostile witness in May.
That's a massive dramatic element. It raises the stakes so much. It transforms the legal section from a sorry he lost explanation into a get your popcorn ready teaser.
Changes the energy completely. By the end, the listener should be on the edge of their seat about the May trial, not nodding off about defamation statute.
I'm really seeing a pattern here. It's about taking the raw emotional energy of this piece.
Which is clearly passionate.
And refining it into a weapon, sharpening the blade, not just swinging it wildly.
That is a great analogy. The raw material is all there. The tiny violin text, the hostile witness possibility, the cult accusations. These are potent facts. The delivery just needs to match the gravity of the evidence.
And I think the author struggles with their own positioning. They say they hate the angry manosphere and victim feminism, but the language, sweetheart, bitch, it pulls them right back into the bucket they claim to despise.
Exactly, which is why that tone critique is so vital. If you want to be seen as a credible, objective third path, the language has to reflect that.
It's about alignment. Aligning the tone with the stated intent. If the intent is to expose ruthless businesswomen, you do that with cold, hard facts, not name-calling.
Yes. And regarding the business versus bullying distinction, that's crucial for the audience. If you just attack them for being successful, you lose half the room.
Right.
If you attack them for being cruel, you can win everyone over.
That's a subtle but powerful shift. You want to say, yes, good for her for being a great businesswoman, but look at what she did to this guy personally.
And finally, the psychological projection. We see this a lot. She looked at him with hate. He felt sad.
We don't know that.
We don't know that, but we do know she texted, I think this bitch knows something is coming.
Focus on the external, not the internal.
So we're really asking the writer to trust their evidence more. They don't need to embellish it with insults or guesses. The evidence is damning enough on its own.
It's fascinating how much stronger the piece becomes just by stripping away the noise. What's left is a really tight, compelling industry thriller.
It really is. It turns a rant into an exposé.
I imagine the writer might feel a bit defensive hearing this, thinking, but I am angry. Why can't I express that?
And they can, but anger is best expressed through the relentless accumulation of facts. A cold, hard list of grievances is often scarier than a shouting match. The anger doesn't disappear. It sublimates into something sharp.
It becomes an indictment rather than a complaint. That's what the script wants to be.
Exactly. An indictment. And an indictment requires precision.
Mm-hmm.
So, to wrap this up, let's recap the main points of our critique today. We are advising the writer to elevate the language, remove the gendered insults like sweetheart and lady.
Right. Don't punish them for being sharks. Call them out for being bullies.
We also want to ground that psychological speculation in behavioral evidence. Analyze the culture clash rather than imagining feelings of revulsion. And finally, streamline the legal backstory.
Less about why he lost the last one, more about why the next one matters.
Exactly. Our call to action is to implement these shifts. Transform the piece from a polarized commentary into a robust, evidence-based industry critique. The facts are on your side. Let them speak.
I would love to see a revised draft of this. The potential is huge.
Me too. Thank you for submitting your work to the critique. We invite you and all our listeners to submit your work back in again for more feedback. We love seeing how these pieces evolve. Until next time, keep refining.
See you next